Hi there, welcome to the Half a Bubble Out podcast. Have you ever had the challenge of actually aligning your company and all of your employees so they're all working together? Have you ever had a problem of motivating individuals in your company so that you can get them to perform at their best possible peak? But sometimes it just falls flat because you're struggling with whatever you say doesn't seem to motivate them. Well, there's reasons for this. Actually, there's 3 different ways people like to be motivated. They're inspired to do their best work. And if you can figure out what those 3 types are and align yourself with them, well, amazing things can happen. And today we're going to talk about those 3 things and expand on them. So let's dive in. The challenge business people face all the time, all of us, is how do we align our people, get them motivated, get them excited, and actually get the best performance out of our team?
Absolutely.
And one of those challenges actually goes towards how do we motivate them? And what happens and why do people make that? What mistake do people make when it comes to motivation?
Yeah. So the biggest mistake I think people make when they come to motivation is they assume that everyone is motivated by the same thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that that is actually not true. And you might be surprising how many people are not motivated by the goals that you're setting for them.
It is so not true. Okay, so what's the truth? Oh, great, Kathy.
So the truth is, as a Western society, we are so built around thinking about goals, right? We set goals physically, financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We set goals.
Well, and we're told to set goals.
Absolutely.
And the books say to set goals, and every New Year's Eve.
Oh, every New Year's resolution, right? Right? Yep. So every year, New Year's resolutions happen. And what's always been intriguing to me is how very few people actually accomplish a New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
In fact, I looked it up, and Forbes magazine last year said about 9 to 12% actually
claim that they actually. Well,
Yep.
And those numbers have gone up because there's many of us who just refuse to set a New Year's resolution.
Well, and even those who are setting resolutions, they also indicated that there's like 65% of people who set resolutions for New Year's do so because they feel pressured to do so, right? Yes. So you're supposed to set a resolution, so you do. And then I don't know, it's like 75% of people only make it through the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, people make you feel guilty sometimes. Like, oh, you need to have one. Well, if you don't have one, you're not growing. You're not really.
Exactly. And in companies, right? We are absolutely, we love goals. We talk about SMART goals, right? You've got to set something that's specific and measurable, and it's achievable, it's realistic, it's time bound, right? Yeah. So we care a ton about goal setting.
Yeah.
But what if one of the problems we have is that 85% of the people around you, 85% of adults, say within a 100-mile radius of you, and probably within your company, are genuinely demotivated.
That sounds
by
like
goals.
A very specific what about number you chose.
It is a very specific what about number. 85% of people are genuinely demotivated by goals. So what we want to talk about today is what we call the 80-15-5 rule.
Okay.
You've heard of the 80-20, right?
We've talked about it.
Yeah, we've talked about it. 80-20, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Yep. The 80-15-5 rule is a tool of communication to help you understand how you can take what you need to achieve and frame it in a way that all 100% of you people can actually embrace it, as opposed to perhaps just a few. So that's what we're going to talk about.
All right. Well, and this is important because when people are talking in business leadership or anything like that about company alignment, how do you align people? And it's interesting because there's this pressure even with leaders. We talk about it and we teach it. You want to set goals. If you're doing strategic planning, you need to set goals. You cannot accomplish something significant time and again, over and over again, over a long period of time, unless you actually have clear goals. But once you set the goals, we need to separate out in this conversation the difference between setting the goal, because that's important for strategic planning.
Absolutely.
And how do you motivate people?
Exactly.
So elaborate.
Okay. So what we know is that 80% of the people, adults within 100 miles, say, 80% are actually motivated not by goals, but by solving a problem. So you present a problem that has to be solved that works your way towards the goal that you need, and you can suddenly begin to capture those people. 15% are actually motivated by achieving goals. And then another 5%, which is where we get the 80 and the 5% are motivated by opportunities. What is it that I can have that I couldn't have, right? What is it that I can grab? What is that next new thing? So you've got like 80% of the people are problem solvers. They're fix-it people. They're playing defense. They just want to know, like, what's the problem and how can I solve it, right? That's what motivates them. 15% are motivated by actually achieving a goal. Like it's out there. Let's go get it. And then 5%, so that they're playing more, your folks who are actually goal driven are more your offense players. They're actually excited about reaching a goal. And then the opportunity people are more like, they're your grab it. Like what can we go out there and grab? So if we can take whatever your 2025 strategic goals are and figure out how to frame those in a way that is a problem, a goal, and an opportunity, you're going to stand a much better chance of capturing all of the different people and helping them be motivated in the same direction as an organization. So,
yeah, absolutely. And whether it's an annual goal or it's quarterly goals or anything like that, to bring everybody in. So you can use this tool to focus everyone by including all three things.
Absolutely. So before we elaborate on this, I know where we learned the 80-15-5 rule, but why don't you share, where did we learn the 80-15-5 rule and how is it?
So you're asking a question you already know the answer to.
I am, but I'm asking you to explain to our fine listeners who are thinking, who made that up? Like,
yeah. Well, what's interesting is there's a gentleman by the name of Bob Beal, and Bob has been a mentor and a coach. He's in his 80s now. He's been a mentor and coach for 40, maybe close to 50 years, maybe more than 50 years. And he's done over 50,000 hours of coaching with leadership, senior leaders, all kinds of leaders.
So he doesn't have much experience.
Not much at all. No, going from Fortune 100 companies to international nonprofits to small companies. So he has seen this over and over again. And his observations and his ability to document and look at these things has been incredibly valuable, not to mention his other professional experience. But here's a guy he's done the work and the research and made lots of observations about leaders and organizations. And this is one of them. And there's some pretty simple things that come out of this, because you're like, okay, you want to sit down and you go, here's your goals. What happens if the senior leader of the company is not motivated by goals?
Well, yeah.
What if they're motivated by solving problems? They're part of that 80%. This doesn't mean that, the smaller percentage doesn't mean all leaders are like that. They're not. Because you can have leaders that are motivated by solving a problem. You can have leaders that are motivated by goals. You can have leaders that are motivated by opportunities. And conversely, the opposites aren't real exciting.
Well, first of all, how would you identify yourself in that 80-15-5?
So our staff has identified me.
Yes, but do you believe that they are correct? Do you agree with them?
Not as black and white as they do. Now, I think this is what a lot of people will say. I'm a little bit of each. I think we all are a little bit of each in different contexts. We all want to achieve something. There's also always something we want in life. I want something to be like this. That's really like achieving a goal. And not everybody is the looking for an opportunity. So I struggle with identifying myself. The staff thinks I'm an opportunity seeker because I am regularly seeing opportunities and I want to grab them. And I think that's probably right. But on the close heels, I love solving problems. Matter of fact, when I'm working with clients, when I'm working on projects or anything else, most of the time my mind is trying to solve a problem. My mind wanders to, this.
I do.
My mind wanders to problems that nobody else is thinking about, and that probably, and sometimes in my downtime have nothing to do with work, have nothing. Sometimes I'm trying to solve problems that only so-and-so thinks about, but I don't know anybody who thinks about some of the problems I think about.
There's times you're sitting there and I'm like, why are you thinking about that?
But I find myself going, I'm super curious. But when we're working with clients, I'm like, okay, what's the problem we're solving? This is not vague. Give me a goal. That's helpful. And tell me the problem we're solving. And maybe I've learned to just ask the questions over the years, and maybe I really am much more of an opportunity seeker, but I've learned over the years and I've balanced out my skills. Because if somebody says they want to achieve a goal, I don't necessarily believe at this point in life that if you achieve that goal, they'll actually be happy with you.
Mm.
And the reason I say that is because often we've experienced the fact that somebody says, this is my goal, but what they haven't identified really is clearly the problem they're trying to solve. So that goal might actually not solve the problem they thought it would solve. A real easy one is making enough money. As a leader, getting your company to a certain size means that you don't have any more problems. Unfortunately, when you have a smaller company, you think that there's a certain level where everything smooths out. And there's a place where it smooths out, and then it gets harder again in a different way.
Yep.
So I think long short of it, there's a lot of things in what I just said. I'm probably an opportunity seeker, but I love to solve problems. In my entertainment world and in my work world, I'm like, okay, where's that cool thing? Look, this is an opportunity we could take advantage of that will really be a good thing. I like opportunities when they come along.
Yeah. Yeah, you for sure do. And I am.
What do you think you are? You're a problem solver.
I'm a problem solver. In fact, I get great joy out of helping people solve problems.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, that's where I find my joy, when someone says, thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that quickly. Thank you for how helpful you are.
Well, see, I like that too. Well, and you know what the thing is when you solve a problem people have, it's much more tangible.
Yeah. And that's part of it is I'm a very present, tangible person in terms of everything about my personality, Myers-Briggs, whatever else, right? I'm very present. And so the fact that I can grab something tangible and solve it is way more satisfying and motivating to me than a goal that feels elusive.
Yeah.
And that makes it difficult. Okay, so how do you then frame a conversation or announcing like this is where we're going as a team in a way that addresses all three? Yeah. So I thought we'd start with something silly and fun.
Okay.
So let's pretend
yes.
that you're a parent. Wait, you are a parent.
Imagine
However,
that.
Let's pretend that you're the parent of an emerging teenager, right?
Right. We did that once. I don't want to go back.
Right. Fair enough. But one of the things that happens when a child starts becoming a teenager is you start to realize they no longer smell like a sweet child anymore.
Oh.
Do you remember those days?
Well, no, I don't remember those days, whether I blocked them out or not.
I remember them mostly.
And we had a daughter, so
she was mellow.
Better than a boy.
I remember mostly with my brother.
Yeah.
Like you would open the door to his bedroom and it would be like, I mean, just gassy as cloud, right? Totally unsafe. So what if your goal as a parent is to just get your kid, to motivate your kid to shower every day? Like just shower every day. How would you frame that as a goal, a problem, and an opportunity? What do you think?
Getting them to shower is a goal.
Mm-hmm. Let's start with the problem.
Here's what I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the problem.
At this
point in life, and what we know, I'm going to start with the problem because we need to make sure that we're starting on solid ground. Now, in the old days, I probably would have said, don't you want people,
don't you want to smell better?
Something? Why don't do you smell yourself? I think what I would do is I would sit there and go, okay, look, we have a problem. Here's the challenge I'm facing is when you come around, oftentimes your BO, your odor is more challenging, we smell it differently than you smell it. You're trying not to set them off and you're trying not to you want to just look at the kid and go, look,
yes,
I need to have a conversation. There's two conversations here. There's the conversation that's the pre-conversation to set the permissions for this type of talk. And then later there's the problem you smell.
And I'm wondering if somebody listening is thinking, I actually have that problem with a coworker.
Yeah.
Like their BO.
Yeah. The biggest challenge, like in a coworker situation anymore in today's world, I would go to my boss and I would go, look,
help me.
and unless you're super comfortable with having that conversation, but literally I would go to your boss or I'd go to HR, depending on the size of the company. If it's a small company, I'm like, okay, I need help here. I don't really know. This is these are
I know.
super sensitive conversations about how you handle it. And part of it is you sit there and you go, I am struggling with you aren't bathing enough and it smells. And it to many people around you, I know it doesn't smell bad to you, but to many of us, it smells bad. And I need you to do that. Now, why do I need you to do that? If it's a parent thing, you might still be saying, I'm the parent, I need you to do it. Because no matter what the problem is, they might not care.
Well, that is true. That is true.
So if you're just talking, so if you're talking about just kids, that's one situation. You can't fire a kid.
No. But if you're trying to motivate a kid who's solving a problem solver, right? Maybe you're motivating them around something like, if you shower regularly, you're going to avoid that awkward moment where you just feel grungy and uncomfortable.
So how are you going to translate this kid analogy to employees? Since we're talking to business owners.
Well, I was going to use a kid example and then go to an employee example. I wasn't going to necessarily translate this particular analogy to an employee situation.
Why are we talking about
that? That was not my goal. I was starting small.
Okay.
But apparently not. But I was starting small by framing how would you frame this to a teenager who's motivated by solving a problem, right? So maybe it's I know it just feels like
let's get out of teenager land and go to child land. Child land, I go, you need to do this. I don't want to do it. If you want to have X, Y, or Z,
yes,
you have a problem now. Your problem is if you don't bathe, you don't get X, Y, or Z. There's punishment involved. It probably happens at the teenager level. And I probably say, look, ultimately, I can try and motivate you because I want this problem to be your problem. But if I can't find a problem that we mutually believe in, then I create a problem for them.
Yes.
I mean, that's the first thing is the problem is nobody wants to work with you. And I don't want you to get I want to save our lives a lot of pain.
Yes.
I mean, we had a client right now who we're doing leadership stuff, and they came to us and said, I have an employee who all of a sudden is traveling to another location, and all of a sudden I'm with them and they stink of smoke. They reek of smoke. This is a real world situation that just happened, last week.
Yep.
And so it's like, what do you do? How do you handle this? And we talked to them. We're like, okay, first of all, you just need to bring it up. And you need to say it's a problem because we want to make sure that this is a really positive experience shopping at our establishment. And when that odor bugs a lot of people and some people are very sensitive to smells, that's not welcoming. It pushes them away. We need to fix this. He had the conversation. The guy handled it really well. He wasn't even aware that he smelled like smoke. So
it's like a teenager.
Like, yeah, hey, you need to be aware.
Like,
and then you move from there.
Yep, that actually happens. All right, so let's move into actually like bigger goals.
Okay.
As we're talking about an organization. So let's say that you as a leader have a goal to grow your revenue by 20%. So that's the goal. Simple, right? Problem, opportunity, goal. How would you go after that one?
We need to grow revenue 20%.
Yes.
In what period of time?
Let's say 6 months.
That's really fast.
Let's say a year.
Okay.
Let's say a year.
Okay. And I'm trying to get everybody motivated for that.
Trying to get everybody motivated.
Well, this is the way I pull these all three together. I first of all sit down and I identify the whys behind the 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So what does 20%, if we accomplish that specific goal, what does it actually solve? What problems does it solve? Right. So I want to list out the problems.
Yep.
If we don't have that, we don't get X, Y, and Z. If we stay at where we are, it creates X, Y, and Z problems about paychecks, revenue, bonuses, all that kind of stuff. Then I identify the goal, why that goal,
mm-hmm.
right? We pick the goal and we need it by the end of the year. So it's become smart, right? In many ways, especially if you've thought about it like that, you've built it out. But why? Why is that goal important? What does that goal do for us? And articulate a few of those. And then if we achieve that goal, what are some opportunities that we might be ready for? Either the known opportunities, we need to get to this level to be qualified for X, Y, and Z. Or we realize that it puts us into another realm, another level of actually opportunities we can get to.
Yeah.
So there's some known and opportunities are always unknown, but you can kind of imagine some stuff. Okay. Then you take that list and you boil it down to a couple on each that you've decided are the most significant. And then I would sit down and there's a way I would draw this out, creating an arrow. But basically, I use the analogy when I'm talking to people about two sides of the coin. Problems and goals go together. They're not separate. Nope. Because when I achieve a goal, I solve a problem. And when I solve a problem, well, I want to solve that problem. At some level, solving the problem becomes the goal, especially if I articulate how I want to solve the problem and I create specificity.
Yep.
Again, all of a sudden, what specific problem do we have? What's the timeline? To what extent? When will I know that it's actually done? So defining done is really critical.
Yeah. What happens if we don't do it?
If we don't achieve this goal, what happens? Yeah. And so now all of a sudden, I can step in and I can go, okay, everybody, here's what's going on. We've been talking about something. I want to start with the problem. Here's the problem we're facing right now. And the problem could be multifaceted, but really I'm going, here's a problem that means we experience some kind of pain or discomfort at some level with this problem. Part of the problem also reflects itself in not being able to achieve or get away from, or the opportunity to get away from that pain. So I articulate that and I say, okay, to do that, does everybody agree? And I want to find agreement with the one person or the team. Either leadership has to say, this is a problem and this is why. But at some point, you kind of get buy-in from folks.
Yeah.
And you get buy-in by, if we can get rid of this pain, this is how it will stop negatively affecting you. Here's the goal that will allow us to get away from that pain. And we want to set this goal, and this goal is going to be great. We could celebrate when we hit the goal. And then I would always conversely go, and then it will present other opportunities for us to do, whether it's known opportunities or it will present opportunities for us to make fresh decisions to go in either direction. So it might be qualifying for a loan or financing so we can build a new building or add a new face or hire new people or all of those opportunities. And once we get there, then we can figure out if it's a new position. How do we define which position and how are they going to help us? Because we all feel like we've got more work than we know what to do with. Well, if we're going to do that, we need to expand a little bit. How do we fix this problem of being overwhelmed?
Yep.
Let's be more organized.
Yeah.
Let's achieve a level of that. So I would work through that process of getting a loan, articulating several different answers in all three categories, finding those, and then coming back and then bringing the group together and showing how they all connect. So that in the same group, some of the people who say, you know what, I don't care about that 20%. I mean, I get it. I understand.
Right.
But I don't get super motivated. But I get super stoked about stoked. That's a really old term. But I get excited about.
I said the 80s want you back.
And they can't have me. But I get real excited about maybe solving that problem. Or I just need to focus all on, like, if we achieve the 20%, XYZ is going to happen for us.
Right.
And then everybody can kind of settle into how they're motivated and you can listen to them and realize what they're focusing on.
Yeah, good. So that is a really great way of kind of navigating through those kinds of questions. Like, how do you take this thing? It's a goal. And how do we frame it in a way that would talk to and speak to and motivate all of your team, regardless of how they are motivated? Like, you're actually speaking to the various ways that people are motivated when you do that. And the challenge we have is that when we don't do that, then we can be setting goals. It could be individual performance goals for an employee. It could be, all the different ways we set quarterly, 3-year, annual, all the goals that we set, but we're not connecting it to the ways that our people are motivated.
Yeah.
So the more that we can do that, especially if 80% of people are motivated by solving a problem and they're genuinely demotivated by goals. Like, it just doesn't do it for them.
Yeah.
So how do you translate to get to the same place and cover all three types of humans?
Yeah. And the biggest error is we tend to, without being educated, we tend to focus on the thing that motivates us the most, or the thing that motivates us the most at the time. So all of a sudden, and then because if we're not aware, this is the beauty of understanding this. If we're not aware that these three categories exist, then we don't even realize we're focusing on something that may or may not include the majority of other people.
Right.
And so how do you develop these types of things? I'm telling you what, salespeople, they seem to be more motivated by goals and rewards than they do solving a problem. They are. So if you're trying to motivate them with just solving the problem, you're not going to get there. You've got to have it should be intrinsically valuable to you. Well, that's not what salespeople are in it for. That's not where their gifts are.
Right.
So it's a profession that actually focuses people that say, I'm hungry. I want to achieve stuff. Especially if I'm actually a real, not aggressive is the word, but motivated.
Highly motivated
person. So understanding all this, all of a sudden now, as a leader, you have the knowledge to go learn to implement this.
Yeah. So just for me, the biggest thing is just having my eyes open to the fact that there is an 80-15-5 rule, that people aren't motivated by the same things. And when you say that out loud, you're like, well, that makes sense. Of course they're not. But you go back to the New Year's resolutions. How many people set a goal and then they just fail? Because it probably turns out they're not motivated by achieving a goal. They're motivated by something else. So framing how we talk about the goals that we have, because you can't succeed in business without having goals. There's no question. You have to have them. But how do you frame them so that it captures your people, especially if 80% of them are problem solvers?
So is it fair to say that this whole entire conversation about problem solving, goal setting, and opportunity seeking is the solution to us having higher performing teams and individuals, and for our company to become more aligned, to move in the direction that you've set as leadership of your big, hairy, audacious goal, your strategic plan for the quarter and for the year. And so you can actually get there with the most effectively and less stress and profitability.
Absolutely. Well stated.
And that is something that you can take to the bank on a regular basis in your leadership. So go take the 80-15-5 rule and apply it tomorrow, and you're going to see some really good results. It'll take a little bit. You're going to have to practice, but eventually you can become really skilled at this, and your people will thank you for it.